Hello Internet! Some of you have been asking about how to import projects into, say, Unity or just use Git. And so we're going to actually go a little bit deeper than just the local Git that we were doing previously. We're actually going to use GitHub.io and create a website in Git. And this will kind of show us how to do pull requests, how to clone a repository, and things like that. I almost got the words screwed up there, but we got there in the end. So this is just a really basic GitHub project that I've created on the left here, and it's worldofzero.github.io. Also, the project is just called that. That's the name of the project. This is important in this specific case. The name of the actual repository matters because GitHub has a specific feature where if you name it your organization name, in my case World of Zero, and then do .github.io, it is going to actually create a website and host all the static content here as if it's a website. And so your README and stuff isn't going to be displayed because that's not the index file. If you need a website, you need an index. We don't have that, so it doesn't work. If I go to worldofzero.github.io, oh, okay, we get our README. Cool. So it's already working. I didn't know it did that, but anyway, we have a README here. That sort of works, but I want to actually host a static page. Let's say I have a project or a game or something like that, and I want to actually host a project website. In order to do that, I need to actually download this repository, create all the content, and then upload it back. And so the way you do that, if you're just getting started with Git, you need to actually clone the repository. There's this handy clone here. And so this is going to give you a URL. You can use either, well, I guess you can only use HTTPS. Sorry, that's a different feature. But if you go git clone, this is going to copy the folder or copy everything from the master branch and pull it down into your local repository. So this is actually going to create a folder called GitHub worldofzero.github.io. If I look there, there's the folder. And so we can actually go in here. That's not how you go into something. There we go. And ls. And you can see we now have our license and our README there. And posh.io is saying we're on the master branch and there's no changes. That's good. Everything worked. We now have what we want. And I'm going to switch over to Visual Studio Code because it's easier to create web content here. So we need an index. That's not how you spell index. So we'll just create index.html. By default, this will be the file that's loaded. If you have this, it's going to load it. Apparently, if you don't, it loads your README. So that's an option as well. You could theoretically just create something entirely using Markdown. And like if you need just a basic blog or something, that'll work. We want something entirely different though. So I actually want to serve some content. So let's just create this. I'm not good at what we're about to do, so this is going to look interesting. But effectively what we need is we just need web content. I'm not going to create your web content for you because that would be bad and I'm not good at it. So we're just making some basic stuff. Let's say, hello, World of Zero. And so this is just a header and whoop. Open up the settings. Nice. Let's do just a basic paragraph that says like, hi there, welcome to my website. And so this is just going to be a super basic demonstration of how to do that. And so if we look at this, we should be able to inspect what this will look like with Visual Studio Code. Probably don't need that to take up so much space. That should preview. Oh, open change. What? Do I not have a web previewer? Well, that's just weird. Huh. Okay. I thought I had a thing to preview websites. Apparently not. I just had to reinstall Visual Studio Code. So apparently some of my extensions are missing. Oops. So here's our basic web stuff. We could open this up in a browser and it would just work. But it doesn't really matter. We have changes here, which means we can check them in Git. So we're going to use the shell again. not because you have to. If you wanted to check it in with Visual Studio Code, you just click this plus button here, click this plus button, or either one really. This will add all of your changes. This will add specific files. Then give it a message and click this commit button. That will commit it to your local repository, and then there's a sync button down here that will actually handle pulling changes down and pushing them back up. So that's how that all works. But we have made our changes without creating a new branch. So let's do that. And this is going to get interesting because I always forget how to do this. Not the branching part. Git branch. What do we want to call this? Create index. And we will git checkout create index. We're going to check that out. And so we're here. We have this create index. If I do a git status, you can see our index is there. So let's add that index.html and commit this and just say added basic index.html. There we go. So our changes are committed. We have nothing outstanding. Everything's there. So our local branch is fine. That's great. But it doesn't exist out on the server. If I open up my thing here, even if I refresh this, my branch doesn't exist. That's part of the nice thing about Git is you can work locally and you don't need the internet to sync all your changes. The downside is you have to do all that stuff manually. So what we're going to want to do is git push, which is going to push this up to the server. The problem is we haven't created this branch on the server, so it doesn't know what we're pushing to. One of the confusing things of having all of this distributed stuff is you can have things named different things on different computers. So theoretically, you can actually have a branch name something very specific and rename it or change it and then push that. And so it can get a little bit confusing in that way. But in this case, it's actually going to give us the command for that. I'm glad it does because I never remember this. And so what we want to do is set the upstream to the origin, which is going to be, in this case, the origin is our remote server. That's just the name of it. So there's a git remote, I think. Whoops. Don't want to do that. Apparently help on Windows opens up a web browser. But if there's a remote command that can actually show you what remotes you can have more than one. And that's why setting this upstream is important, because you need to know where your changes are pushing. You can't just say push it everywhere. You probably could, but that's not necessarily helpful. So now that I deleted everything that I wrote, let's write that again. So we're going to push it up to our origin server. So we're pushing this up to GitHub to the branch called create index. And so if I hit enter here, that's going to ask me to log in. This is just, you need authentication to push to whatever. If you haven't logged in, it's going to ask you for a login. So that's what this is. If you don't see this, it probably isn't going to work. So I'm going to enter my credentials here. You're not going to see this because there's a whole bunch of passwordy stuff. All right, so after you enter those credentials, it will immediately push. You can see I got the wrong password here the first time. And so you'll get a login failed, and it will ask you to do it from the shell. And then if you just fail out of that, you can just run it again and try and actually enter the correct password, because that's important. So what this has done is it's created this new index and pushed it up here. So if we refresh this, we now have a create index branch with an index.html. Now, if I refresh this now, we're not going to see those changes because it's still on the create index branch, and this specific thing is going to host on our main branch. It's hosting on our master branch. And so even though we push those changes up, we aren't going to see them. They're effectively in a development branch. They're in a branch just for testing or submitting new features or stuff for feature work. So what we need to do is create a pull request. Or not. Why can't I create a pull request? I'm not signed in. That probably is important. So in order to do that, we need to do that and that. So now we have this prompt here. We're logged in now, and we have this prompt for a new recently pushed branch. So GitHub is going to be a little bit smart and say, you recently pushed a change to this branch. Do you want to pull it into something else? If not, you can just go to new pull request and create it yourself. They've got this handy little arrow here, which means you are pulling into master from create index. Everybody kind of thinks of that a little bit different, but that's sort of the way I would think about it. What branch are you pulling into? What is the base that you're kind of building on top of? And then what are you adding? And that's the create index. And so this will create it. If I go back to the main thing, if I just click compare and create, it's going to do all of that for me. It will fill in with the commit message if there is one. And then you can just write something handy. So you can give a comment here. If you're working with a project with a bunch of people, it helps to leave a comment so that people know what they're looking at. Ideally, PRs are used for like code reviews. So if you're submitting something to an open source project, they're going to want to review your changes prior to pulling them into their project and becoming maintainers of that. And so it's kind of important that you give a good description of what you actually changed, because if you don't, they're just going to ask about it. For personal projects like this one is, you don't necessarily need to worry about this unless you're looking through them. It's sort of a personal preference thing. I kind of vary. So, So effectively here, we're adding a basic index page. If I create pull request, that's going to create this. It will check to make sure everything's working. If you have a CI/CD pipeline set up, this is going to stay either red, yellow, or green, depending on the status of that. So if you hook in a automated build and that fails, this is going to say that it failed. And so you can actually get a visual representation here. We don't have any of that, so we're just stuck here. What I can do then is click merge here, and that's actually going to merge the changes in. Before we do that though, if you want to look at, say, the commits that were made to this branch, you can do that. There's just the one. Or if you want to see what's changed, you can see a full list here, and we can actually add comments. So if I say, I like the use of the header for clarification. So if you do that, you can either add a single comment, which is just going to post a comment immediately, or start a review. So this is more handy if you're doing team projects or something like that. You can review and either comment, approve, or request changes. You can't request changes for your own thing or approve your own thing, so I can only comment on them. But you get a one review comment, which is sort of a general comment about it. Like, this is a review. Why not? So we have this review. We have 2 comments on it. If I hit submit review, I'll probably get an email. But we get somebody just reviewed it. This was their comment, and then here's what they were commenting. So this gives you a way to kind of communicate about the changes, and people can actually respond to each of these in threads, which makes it relatively easy. These are GitHub features. Other hosts are going to do it a little bit differently. Most of them that I've seen have features very similar to this, but they may be slightly different. It's not a native Git feature. So there's that. The one thing that is if I do a merge, we get this comment thing. This will show up. This is going to be the name of your commit. So if I actually confirm this, if I go back here to our code and look at our master branch, we have in our history somewhere this. So merge pull request from this. That is the last thing that happened on this master branch, is we merged that in. And so our changes should now be visible like that. Obviously it looks different. It looks worse because we're using the default browser styling now because I didn't set a style. But you get the general idea. We can host either a README now or an index file, and there's a way to fairly easily change that. The one thing we haven't done yet is get all those changes, because we just made a bunch of changes on the server, right? So now our master branch has our index file. Locally, we don't have that. So we actually need to get that. So if I go down, oh geez, that's being weird. Let's make you a little bit bigger. So I'm not sure that's going to help, but think of it like we just pushed all these changes up. We said we gave them to the server. The opposite of a push is a pull. And so that's what we need to do. There's two ways to see changes, but first we need to be on the right branch. That was odd. Okay, we're at the bottom again. That's neat. Cool. So we want to get into that branch. So we're going to check out our master branch. And we're on our master. If I do a git fetch now, that is going to go out to the remote server, the one we have currently configured, which is going to be GitHub. You can see it went out to GitHub, to that server, and got changes. And now we have two changes waiting. So if I do a git status, just quick, we can see we are two branches or two commits behind the master branch on our origin. So this is sort of the notation for that. It's the source and then the branch. And so we need to get those changes. Luckily, we don't have any conflicts, or we shouldn't. So I should just be able to pull. And so what this is going to do is pull that index file down. And if I do a git status, we have no more changes left. Yes. And if I do an ls to kind of list everything in the directory, we have our index file now. And hopefully that has everything we originally gave it. So we just pulled that file, or we gave it kind of a roundabout path, but we created it on a branch, sent that branch up to a remote server, moved it on that remote server over to our master branch, and then pulled that master back down to our local server. So kind of did this giant loop, and we ended up getting it here. The cool thing with this is now anybody who pulls this code is going to see that, and so they can kind of play around with that. So this is kind of a handy little way. I kind of wanted to show off the GitHub IO features, because you can kind of, if you're looking to just create like a portfolio page, you don't need to host anything. This has like HTTPS support and things like that. And it's got all your code there too. So especially if you're doing a coding job, this can be a good way to have both your resume and like some of your projects and some of your past work all in one place. So I thought that was pretty cool. But I'll leave it here and let you guys play around with this. It's pretty easy to get started. There's not much to it. You just need a GitHub account. So if you guys have feedback or suggestions for me, let me know in the comments. I'll leave a link to our Discord channel down in the description. You can come and join that. We kind of talk about projects, share some of the cool stuff that's happening just across the programming space or development space. And that's, yeah, pretty much it. So till next time, see you, Internet.